Hello, I'm Hayley Jarick, CEO of the Supply Chain Sustainability School. This episode of the People Planet Profit podcast was recorded as part of a video series. In this theoretical integrated design forum, architects, engineers, material suppliers, builders, and facility managers tell us things they wish the others knew about sustainable properties. We hope you enjoy. Hi, Caroline. Thanks for joining me today. Let's kick off the session by introducing yourself for people that don't know you.
A pleasure, and thanks for asking me, Hayley. So I'm Caroline Pidcock. I'm an architect. I've been in my own practice for 30 years. The last 4 years, I've been doing less project-based work and more, I suppose, advocacy and strategy thinking around sustainability and how architecture can apply our considerable skills to being a part of the solution in the climate change world rather than a big part of the problem.
Excellent. So what I'm going to do is run you through a series of questions, and we're going to do this for the stack of other people through the supply chain of building and construction as well. And I'm going to kick off with what's 3 things that architects wish that engineers knew about sustainability properties.
How about if I just rephrase that a bit and tell you about the best working relationship I had with an engineer, and that was when we brought them on early. Much earlier and just after we had some very basic sketches, and I empowered him, that was a he, to say you are really important, because if this starts getting complicated or tricky, we need to know, because that's when it gets expensive and carbon intensive. So that's the first one, is to be a really good guide to saying too hard, how can we simplify this? And the next one was, how do we decarbonize the material? And we worked, and he said, well, I wonder how we do that. And I said, well, I suppose it's lighter is less carbon. And so then he developed up these really great ways of optimizing the structure with different arrangements for posts and beams and struts to sort of see which one would deliver the least amount of carbon and work architecturally as well. So it's working with both at the same time. And the other thing is just to be really open-minded to how their skills can work with our skills to come up with the best thing, rather than being very process-driven and other things. So I think they are the things that characterized a really great working relationship I had.
I think they're 3 awesome points too. You know, if you work in harmony and sort of syndicate where things are at, it turns less into everyone's heard the cliches, right? Architects design beautiful things and engineers have to try and figure out how to build them, or engineers design very practical things that architects think don't look very pretty. It's that whole, the 2 working together to say, well, hang on, but we can design something really practical and pretty if we put our 2 minds together and work through some of those solutions. So I think that that's some awesome top 3 things that engineers can definitely pick up that architects would like to promote. So then if we move on to slightly further down the chain, so let's talk about all the material suppliers out there. So what are 3 things that architects wish material suppliers knew about sustainable properties?
Well, the very first thing is know what's in your product so we can talk about it. Because there's a lot of toxic stuff in products and people don't even know, and that's not okay. It's not okay to be there, and it's even worse not to know it. So really understand what's in your products, and I suppose then be open to finding ways of delivering that product with no toxic materials, because how crazy is it that we put any toxic materials into our buildings? And then I think the other one is just to be able to really work with architects on what the qualities of the materials are and where they are best used and where they are best not used, because I think there are some materials that can be exposed to a lot of weather and other ones that never should be. So I think having that, again, interactive discussion around where those products are well used and where they're not is really important.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, that whole durability factor during construction, right? You might have it looks pretty when you build the building, but if 3 weeks in, it doesn't stand the test of time. It doesn't look very pretty sort of after a month, a year, 7 years, 10 years. So it's around ensuring the longevity of that beauty and functionality beyond that point. So I think that they're 2 very good things. And I know that we talk a lot with material suppliers about sort of knowing all of the aspects of your product. So not just your carbon footprint, but like you said, the toxicity inside the different product, what sort of nasties are in there. And a lot of people are working in that space around environmental product declarations for that. Definitely in there. And I think more so probably these days than anywhere else, it's around where you're making those products as well. You know, has modern slavery been used in the production of your materials? Knowing that, so that you can then have a conversation about it.
And what energy is being used to create them and all those sorts of things. And then getting engaged about how to improve them on all those levels.
Yeah. So it's a thing. Get yourself educated so you can have a conversation. I suppose is the key one. So then if we sort of then talk about how then is sort of I want to say sort of the middle gap between those two. So you've designed it, it's been engineered, you've got all your materials specified, and then you hand it over to a builder to then turn it into reality. So what sort of 3 things do you wish architects wish that builders knew about sustainable properties?
Well, again, first thing I have been doing in the last 10 years is bringing a builder on at the very beginning of the process, because they have a lot of expertise and experience. And rather than getting a fully documented, fully specified set of drawings and documents and then going, actually, I wouldn't have done it like that, is if you bring them on earlier, then you can actually incorporate their intelligence and expertise in a really productive manner. So early engagement and collaboration, I think, is really, really important to a successful building. And then I think that there are a number of builders who see how important sustainability in the built environment is, and anyone who doesn't needs to get on board and stop battling against, I'm not going to make change, you don't need to do this. We all need to work together towards this, and this is the future. And if you've got to retrain yourself and some of your tradesmen and other people to deliver more sustainable buildings, get onto it now. Stop fighting the inevitable future, because it's a lot better for everyone, including yourselves. And I think the other thing is to don't be afraid of women on a building site. And really diverse groups of people in gender, in race, in age, in all sorts of things is really important for any successful ecosystem, including a building site. And I think we've all got something to offer, and we need to be open to listening and hearing and finding what that is the other person has to offer and bringing that into the project.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I mean, I laughed when you said it, because I've been there and I've felt that resistance is the polite way of putting it, of being integrated into very male-dominated industries. But at the same time, I think it's just that, like you said, it's that tolerance. It's that being okay with a different opinion, understanding that difference isn't bad or good, it's just different. Having mature conversations around differing point of views and seeing that really constructive conflict. So I think people fear conflict in general as being bad and negative and disagreement and hindering efficiency and progress and all those sorts of fun things. Whereas really constructive conflict is amazing. And we all know that, diverse groups of people can see things ahead of time. They're all looking at things from different angles. They experience things in different ways. They can foresee problems that others can't have. And surely being able to openly express those sorts of things early on.
I think if you've got a ground rule that everyone comes to this trying to get the best outcome, and therefore to tease out some different ideas is a good thing before it's built.
Yeah. Much harder after it's built to then go back and fix it.
After it's built.
Much more expensive afterwards, I imagine. So then if we follow the timeline down, and we've designed, we've engineered, we've specified, we've constructed, then we hand the building over to someone to manage it. So either that's a homeowner or a manager of a residential complex, or a facility manager of a commercial or an industrial process in that mix. But from an architectural point of view, what are 3 things that architects wish that facility managers knew about sustainable properties?
Oh, goodness. Well, I think that there probably needs to be some really good discussions and or drawings and or documents talking about how that building is intended to operate, and then if it's not working quite right, to have a discussion before you just make wholesale changes. So I think that a building it's an interactive thing. It's a bit like sailing a boat, and you've got to kind of do it with the weather conditions in mind, and adjust and tune as you go. And so often architects aren't involved in that process, and sometimes they know stuff that might not be totally obvious. So I think being open to discussions around what was intended and what was done and how that might work or not work and what adjustments might need to be made is really important. And then I think facility managers need to understand there's a whole lot of different people in the building, and they all have different wants and needs, and how it's no mean feat trying to make a building comfortable for many different people, but perhaps sort of considering different ways of having zoning people who like cold or hot or whatever might be a good idea. And I think that the other thing is that not all people are super computer literate. So if you give them too complex management systems, they just want to go into a room and turn a button. They don't want to have to kind of program it and pick things. So I think very simplified options are really important to enable the best engagement with people.
Amazing. I think that's true too. I think, in terms of, I remember if we talk about lighting, right? So there used to be the whole campaign of turn the lights off when you leave a room, turn them on when you walk into a room. And of course, everyone would leave the lights on when they exited, and then they'd put signs up saying, remember to turn the lights off. And then someone said, why don't we just automate it so that it's on a sensor? When you walk in and you're in there, the lights come on, and then when you leave, they turn themselves off automatically. And it's like, oh, actually, that's a much simpler solution than trying to get everybody to engage in this process, right?
It is until you're in the meeting room, and then you've got to go like this too.
It's like jumping around. It's like, you're not active enough, get up and walk around. But I think that's kind of where things are going to, is that whole keep it simple.
Because I did a house once, and the man really loved building automation, and we did all this stuff, and she just walked in and went, shit, I just want to turn the light on. I don't want to have to go through all of this. And I mean, it could have been a different thing, but people are different and have different appetites for that engagement.
Yeah. I think voice activated anythings is sort of the bane of people's existence, It's like, turn the lights on. No, I didn't want the kettle on, That's just, that's not what I wanted. What was the command? I can't remember the language.
And I do think that smart buildings need smart people in them who can work with them and understand what's happening and adjust to suit, because we can't give over all our intelligence to machines.
Well, you do need some intelligence to hand over sometimes too. Yeah. So I think that sometimes just sort of automating or making things simpler in that process is definitely a good way forward to be able to move through everything as well. Well, that comes to the end of my list of questions. So thank you very much, Caroline, for imparting your knowledge from an architecture point of view into the series. And I look forward to chatting with you.
Can I make one more comment?
Absolutely.
Okay. When I was down in Melbourne emceeing an event on the circular economy, and I spoke to Robbie from Revival Projects, and he said, the problem with you architects is it's like you go to the fridge or the pantry and you open it up and you look at everything and you pull it all out and you throw it away and you buy a new and start from there. And he said, the skills you got to learn is to open that up and go, what's here? What can I make from what I've got? And I think that is one of the most important things our industry needs to start doing right now, because every single tonne of carbon counts, and making the most of the embodied carbon of existing buildings and materials and building systems is really important. And I think we've got to get much more creative, working collaboratively together to work out how to do that and deliver very beautiful, very efficient, very structurally sound buildings. And we can.
Very good point to make. I think circular economy is going to be the big thing that everyone talks about over the next few years. And we've got to stop this dependence, this linear cycle of dig it up, use it, throw it away. And, Australia's been blessed with a lot of green space that we've been expanding to, and we've now hit the sort of infrastructure limits of where all that construction can get to. So we're going to have to start being smarter with the stuff that's already there and close to existing facilities. So a very poignant reminder at the end of a great session. So once again, thank you very much, Caroline, for joining me.
Pleasure, Hayley. Lovely chatting.